This is the FlipNerd.com Expert Real Estate Investing Show, the show for real estate investors, whether you're a veteran or brand new. I'm your host, Mike Hambright, and each week I bring you a new expert guest that will share their knowledge and lessons with you. If you're excited about real estate investing, believe in personal responsibility, and taking control of your life and financial destiny, you're in the right place. Welcome to the FlipNerd.com Expert Interview Show Top 10 series, where we are sharing our top 10 shows from 2017. Now, in this episode, my pal, Brad Chandler, shares how he went from deep debt, just getting started in real estate investing, to doing over 2,000 deals in the Washington, D.C. market. Brad shares how he went from handwriting letters himself and having magnets on the side of his car to building one of the nation's largest and most impressive home buying machines. Brad's willingness to share some critical and important details with you in this episode has won this episode a spot in the FlipNerd.com top 10 shows for 2017. Let's go ahead and jump into the show. Brad, welcome to the show, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me, Mike. And by the way, I do not see many gray hairs, at least not as many as I see on my head.
Well, I just got it. I try to keep it tight now. I get it cut every couple of weeks so you can't notice it all. It's funny because you know how you have kids about this. Of course, our kids have met before, so you have kids about the same age as my son is about to turn 10, and they have no filter on what they say, you know. So this is a couple months back. My son said, "Dad, when you turn your head that way, I can't see any of the gray hairs." I was like, "Okay, thanks." But hey, I like to think that it is a sign of maturity and wisdom. So that's how we're going to leave it.
I hear the ladies like it, so we'll go with that.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Brad, I'm excited to talk. We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about follow-up today. Two things that I was going to say are near and dear to my heart, near and dear to yours. They should be near and dear to everybody's heart that's a real estate investor because they're critical. So it's going to be a great topic, and I know you've got a ton of experience. And speaking of which, maybe we could start off by you just telling us your background and how you got started in real estate investing and a little bit more about your business, because I don't know many people that are doing as many deals as you guys, especially in a high dollar area market. So maybe tell us a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so I read a book in ninth grade on how to buy real estate with no money down. Always knew I wanted to do real estate investing. Went to college, worked for a developer. And ended up getting my MBA in real estate. People always ask me, did that really help you? And honestly, it didn't really help me for this type of business. So an investor bought my neighbor's house in late 2002, and I went and talked to him, and I go, "What do you do?" He goes, "Well, I buy houses, well below market, and I fix them up and resell them." I go, "Geez, I've got 2 degrees in real estate. Had no idea that you could buy houses at such steep discounts. I thought you got rich in real estate by putting down 20% and letting the houses appreciate, pay them off, and sell them 30 years later, and you're rich." So I was like, wow, that's what I'm going to do. So that was December 2002. I decided that time I was going to make this business work. Had a full-time job. My son was just born. I'd come home and put him to bed at 8 o'clock, work 8 to midnight, work weekends. And it took me till July just working my hiney off to get my first deal. Yeah. Every week that went by, I got more and more, perseverance, saying I'm not going to quit. So I got 6 deals in July and August. Quit my full-time job in October of 2003, and here we are somewhere around 2,200 deals later.
That's incredible. That's incredible. So your company is Express Home Buyers, which if you're on the East Coast, certainly in the Washington, D.C. area, I'm sure people have seen your commercials. So talk about how you went from a one-man shop, maybe just take a minute to, you have a fairly large company now to help enable you do all those deals, but maybe just share the elevator pitch side of kind of how you grew that.
Sure. I think with our, if you count our full-time VAs, we're over 30 people now. So we have grown.
Wow.
When I started out, I did have the vision of doing TV advertising, and that's kind of been our bread and butter. But we'll get into that more in a little bit. So what I did is I read this book, Michael Gerber's book called E-Myth, which if you haven't read and you want to build a business, it's a must read. It teaches you about how to systematize your business. So literally almost from day one, I started making, checklists and flow charts and actually documenting the process so that when I needed to hire, at the beginning it was my partner and myself, and we were doing everything. I came in one day, I was like, this is really stupid. Why are we doing this? Let me focus on this area of the business. You focus on that area of the business. And then we did that for a couple of months, and we're like, wow, now we really need to hire the next person. So I think the first hire was an admin, which I think is logical for most, whether you're a realtor or an investor. It's usually good to get an admin so you can get rid of some of those, $10, $15 an hour jobs that you're doing. And then it just went position to position. The next one was we got an acquisition person, then we got a couple of acquisition people, and then we got an acquisition manager. And we slowly just built up our staff to where we are today, using systems all along the way. We still have systems. We're still creating systems. We're still tweaking systems. But that's how you scale a business, is just, day at a time, just building like building a house.
Yeah. And I know we've talked about this in the past before. I mean, we're the same way. In fact, my group coaching program, we call it the Investor Machine, because we talk about building systems and processes, because it's the only way you can grow. And I mean, as you know, a lot of real estate investors, and maybe people that are listening to the show right now, if you have started at all, it's real easy to get yourself trapped at like the 1 and 2 deal once in a while area, which is just a job, right? You can't get past that without more people and more systems. I mean, you'd agree with that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a chicken and egg, right? You want to grow, you see yourself growing, but you can't really afford it. And you just have to you just got to bet on yourself is kind of what I say.
Well, and if you set the systems up properly to begin with, even if you are a one-man show, that means you're probably going to have more success than the next person. And that success will hopefully equate into dollars, and those dollars will allow you to reinvest back in personnel to further grow your company. Right.
So let's continue talking about systems here. So specifically, we're going to talk about marketing and lead generation. You guys are dominant in your market, the most dominant player. But I know that you wanted to start by talking about the importance of follow-up, right? And that's kind of counterintuitive to maybe somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience. But you and I both know the money is in the follow-up. And I think where we're going to go here is by saying, if you spend a bunch of money on marketing and you don't have follow-up systems in place, then you're just completely wasting your marketing budget. So I don't want to steal your thunder, though. Why don't we kind of dive into the importance of kind of follow-up systems?
Yeah. So a year and a half ago, I started a meetup group, and my first presentation was how to find motivated sellers on a beer budget. Then the next meetup was how to find them if you have a champagne budget. And after that was done, I was like, that was really dumb of me. If I could do this over again, I should have started with follow-up systems as being the number one. So it was happened to be the third. But looking back now, there's no investor that should be spending $1 in marketing, a dime, a penny, whatever you want to say, until you have a kick-ass follow-up system. And what does that mean? That means that you have a CRM, and there are countless ones now, where you can come into the office and on a given day, who do you have to call? Is it sending automated texts? Is it sending automated emails? And there are, there's Investor Fuse, there's Podio, you can create it yourself. There's Zoho, there's Sugar CRM. You can get technology now from $20 to $100 a month, $200 a month, where 20 years ago even, it could have cost you $50,000 to $100,000 to have this technology. This is the greatest time in the world to start and grow a business because of these technology costs. So get your follow-up system set up, and you can literally do it. You could lock yourself in a room on a weekend. You go get Sugar or Zoho CRM for $20 a month, and you could create a series of 10, 20 follow-up emails, text, set up the campaign so that when a lead comes in the system, how many times it's going to be touched. So when a lead comes in our system, we touch them 15 times in the first 4 days. And that's a combination of phone calls, voicemail, text messages, and emails. Wow. Again, you guys can do the same thing without going out and saying, I've got to spend $50,000 on a system. So get that set up before you send out one postcard, put one bandit sign, do anything. You've got to have that follow-up system, because you're going to be wasting money. I guarantee you that over the years, because we weren't always good at follow-up, that we didn't lose hundreds of thousands of dollars. I bet you we lost close to $1 million in having crappy follow-up systems. So it wasn't until about 3 to 5 years ago where we switched that, and now we are just amazing. We closed 10 deals in 2016 just from calling back missed phone calls.
That's awesome. And Brad, when you say you touch them 15 times, let's dig into that a little bit. 15 times in the first 4 days. I assume that means if you haven't made contact, your systems just continue to reach out to them and try to re-engage them, right? But you have a different system. If you do touch them, then there's a different follow-up sequence, I assume, right?
Absolutely. So we have new lead, we have no answer, we have never contacted, we have appointment, nurture. So we probably have about 8 different campaigns. So absolutely. So if we reach them, obviously we're not just going to keep hounding them. They go into another system. They go into, have we made them an offer? If we made them an offer, have we sent them in the contract? Have we met them in person? We're going to touch everyone. Everyone in our system gets touched at least on a 30-day basis, whether we've made contact or whether we've not made contact. And that goes on forever until they sell their house or they tell us, buzz off. And sometimes they tell us that, we might call them back in a couple months.
Are you looking to change your life through real estate investing? If you're interested in either getting started or taking your business to the next level, please check out FlipNerd's private program at theinvestormachine.com. This is the most robust real estate investor coaching, networking, and mastermind on the planet and designed for your success. If you're ready to roll up your sleeves, ready to take personal responsibility for your own success, and ready to dive into a world-class instructional coaching program that provides you step-by-step instruction to help you achieve financial freedom, then you should apply today. Spaces are limited and candidates are only considered after an application and interview process. Think you might be a fit? Learn more today at theinvestormachine.com. Made contact, your systems just continue to reach out to them and try to re-engage them, right? But you have a different system. If you do touch them, then there's a different follow-up sequence, I assume, right?
Absolutely. So we have new lead, we have no answer, we have never contacted, we have appointment, nurture. So we probably have about 8 different campaigns. So absolutely. So if we reach them, obviously we're not just going to keep hounding them. They go into another system. They go into, have we made them an offer? If we made them an offer, have we sent them in the contract? Have we met them in person? We're going to touch everyone. Everyone in our system gets touched at least on a 30-day basis, whether we've made contact or whether we've not made contact. And that goes on forever until they sell their house or they tell us, buzz off. And sometimes they tell us that, we might call them back in a couple months.
Yeah. I've kind of said this a few times on the show before, but we bought a house last year that we had made our initial offer 54 months earlier. And we followed up with them. Like you said, we all of our leads ultimately get to a point to where every 30 days is our kind of, we follow up every 30 days. And every time for every house we buy, I always go back and look at the notes because I know a lot of times it's not a new lead. That's why we're talking about what we're talking about. But on this one, the number was disconnected several times throughout those years. They said they weren't going to sell it. They said they rented it out. But the one thing that they never told us is stop calling. And so we just kept on. And then eventually they said, is your offer still good? And that's what we're talking about here, right?
Well, you love to hear after 54 months, if someone comes back and says, is your offer still good? You're like, hell yeah.
Yeah. Oddly enough, we actually bought it for cheaper than our offer. We bought it for less than our offer 54 months earlier. But
wow.
Yeah.
Good job.
But yeah, that's what we're talking about, right? So maybe share a little bit why this one thing it's important is you've spent the money, and the follow-up part is much, much cheaper than generating a new lead, right? Working with what you already have. But maybe share a couple minutes of your thoughts on just the psychology of a seller and the fact that a lot of the distressed sellers that we talk to or work with are maybe they're often in denial. And then sometimes their situation, whatever the situation is they called us in the first place, tends to get worse sometimes, right? Can you share your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So when foreclosures were more prevalent, I can't tell you the number of people that we got calls from that were 48 hours away from foreclosure. The fastest house we ever bought was, I've lost track, it's probably 4 or 5 years ago. A guy called us, hadn't made mortgage payments. He was disabled, hadn't made mortgage payments, I think in like 3 years. So I don't even know how he's still in the house. It was a Virginia property, which is unusual. But from the time he called us to the time we closed, it was like 22 hours. And we saved him from foreclosure. So yeah, a lot of our deals and a lot of everyone's deals in this space are very hairy. And what do I mean by hairy? There are multiple heirs, or the person has drug issues, alcohol issues. They've got family members in prison. So it's not your typical seller that just is getting a job transfer or moving up in houses. So yeah, there's a lot of hair on these deals, and Oftentimes situations get worse. Oftentimes they look at the offer originally and they're like, no way, I'll get more money. But then nothing is done. Life goes on. Life gets more complicated. So you always want to be there. What I say all the time is get them a letter, get them a postcard. If you make them an offer, send the offer in a big yellow bright envelope that they're likely not going to throw away. They come home one day and their car breaks down and they see your letter, your big yellow envelope on their table, and they walk through the door and they're like, you know what, I just can't do this anymore. Like this house is killing me. These houses typically aren't assets for these people. They're really liabilities because they're just dragging them down. And we as investors oftentimes help them out of terrible situations and allow them to, get a fresh start in their life and move on.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about marketing. So I know we're going to talk a little bit about how to get started if you have a beer budget, and then how you grow from there as your budget expands. So let's talk about beer budgets, where you get started.
So beer budgets, let's go back to when I started. I started when I first decided to start in late 2002, I had a whopping net worth of, drum roll please, negative $80,000. So I did not, I had a newborn son. My wife quit her job to take care of my son. So I didn't have a lot of money coming in. I had a job, but it wasn't making a lot of money. So what did I do? I bought a bunch of bandit signs. When the DC sniper was out picking off people, I was dodging him, putting up bandit signs at 11 o'clock, dressed in all black on telephone poles on, the sides of streets everywhere. I would even go in the interstate sometime and put them like under the underpasses. And I got calls from that, of course, but it didn't cost me much. So I did that. I drove around with these enormous We Buy Houses magnets on my car that said We Buy Houses and then a phone number. Those 6 deals that I mentioned, 3 of them in my first 6 deals in those 2 months, 3 of them were from one person who saw myself. I put them on my ex-wife now, my wife's car at the time, and she was driving around, and he saw one of us, and he called us. So if you're serious about this business and you're not doing bandit signs or you don't have a sticker on your car, you may think it looks goofy, but I probably made $40,000 off of there. So would you drive around with a sign on your car that made you $40,000? And then the third component was direct mail. So I would literally go into the tax assessment website because I didn't even know that the list existed at the time. I didn't know that you could go buy a list of people with equity. And honestly, I don't even know if that did exist then. But anyway, so I would go in and I would look at tax assessment that for people that were absentee owners, meaning that their mailing address did not match up with their property, which means they likely did not live there. It was a rental or they inherited it. And I would hand address envelopes, and I would do 300 of those on the weekend. I would do door hangers. I would drive for dollars. I would go to RIA meetings. They didn't have meetups back then. Network. I got one of my first deals by being on a listserv. Most people probably don't know what that is now, but it was just a group list where people could post stuff. So those are things that really don't cost a lot of money. It's all about activity. Like Nike says, just do it. Don't sit around and study forever. You got to get out there and take action. Get out there and do it. And then consistency with any marketing, you've got to do it consistently. And I have an interesting story on that note. In about 2004, my sister was a stay-at-home mom. She was hand addressing envelopes in my hometown of Charlottesville, Virginia, because I was trying to get deals there. And I got a call one day. I live, 2 hours from there. I got a call one day, and a lady literally said to me, I just got your 6th or 7th letter. I wasn't planning on selling, but since you keep sending me letters, I'll sell my house. She had a tenant in the property, hence absentee owner. My sister was doing the same thing, pulling the tax records for absentee owners. And I got the tenant out. I cleaned out the place, probably cost me $200 or $300. I listed it, and I think I made $40,000 on that deal.
Wow.
So consistency. Had we mailed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 letters, no deal. I wouldn't have made the $35,000. So when you're doing direct mail, if your budget doesn't allow for at least 4 to 5 mailings, don't waste your time. So many people will mail one series and they'll drop 2,000 postcards, 2,000 letters. Hey, I didn't get anything. That doesn't work. Well, it takes time. Just like it takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, one thing I want to make clear here, because I know sometimes, Brad, when guys like you and me talk that have done lots of deals, And people that are newer are listening, they tend to maybe get a little overwhelmed with like systems and having big budgets, and you're on TV and all these things. So one thing that I want to make clear to people is these things are all important, and I'm not trying to take away from the importance of any of them. I teach the same thing. Like, you need to have systems and processes in place, but you don't need to have a Ferrari to haul manure, as I like to say. I mean, don't let the systems and some of this talk get in the way of you getting started and just taking action. Because I think today a lot of people hide behind systems like, oh, I need to get this set up, I need to get that set up. And the truth is you need to do all those things, but you need to be generating leads and constantly taking action all along the way. You can't like just sit back until you get things set up. Like, you need to be hustling and trying to find people to sell you houses along the way, right? You agree with that, Brad, right?
So that's an awesome point. And let me go back and clarify, because people could have misunderstood what I said. When I talked about I built systems from day one of my business, day one means October of 2003, when I actually quit my job. From November of 2002 till I got my first deal in July of 2003, and then I got 6 deals in July and August of that year. I didn't have shit. I didn't have anything. Like, I was just going, I was doing everything, but I was doing it. I was taking action. I didn't go out and spend 5 years like a lot of people do educating themselves on it. I didn't go out and worry about an LLC. I didn't go out and worry about a corporate name and am I protected. I had nothing to protect. I had a negative $80,000 net worth. What I did, and my about it, while others were going out and spending 5 years on education, forming their LLCs, we were doing deals. I went to a Robert Sheeman conference one time in 2003, and I sat next to a lady at lunch that told me that she had been doing research and education for 18 years. And I thought to myself, if 18 years ago she would have bought a house and lost $10,000, she'd probably be a multimillionaire now. But she didn't do it. What she was doing is she was paralyzed by the fear of, what am I going to do wrong? Instead of, let me just go do it. So that's probably, I'm glad you brought that up. That's probably one of the best points you can make, is just nothing has to be perfect. You don't have to get overwhelmed and have all your systems. What you have to do is you need to get your phone ringing with motivated sellers. So whatever it takes to do that, get some money, and then you can start building out all the bells and whistles and the systems and hiring and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, and those things become, like you said, more important when you start ramping up your budget, when you start going from a beer budget to, I guess, a champagne budget, right? So your best leads early on will be the ones you hustle for, the ones you're handwriting letters, magnets on your car, all that stuff. Because one, they're low cost. Ultimately, of course, you have more time on your hands, so you can afford to spend your time that way. But as you start to spend money and buy thousands or tens of thousands or more of letters and postcards a month, then you've got to have systems in place to kind of squeeze all the fruit, all the juice out of that fruit. You'd agree with that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, let's talk about as you kind of grow. So like you talked about a lot of hustle tactics, finding investors, magnets on your car, handwriting letters to niche lists. But then as you start to grow, this is one of the challenges a lot of real estate investors face, is after you hit a certain number of, 4, 5, 6 different niche lists, then you got to start going to the mass lists, right? Which are more of like low equity or kind of a high equity absentee owners. But in a market like where you're at in DC or Dallas, I mean, 7.5 million people here. So the lists just explode, right? So so your budget, if you got to figure out if your budget can explode or not. Right. But let's talk about kind of moving from a beer budget to something bigger than that as you start to scale, and kind of how you did it and maybe how you do it differently, I guess.
So what we did is I started to, I guess in 2004, we started to put, I saw that the popularity of the internet was happening. And so we started putting more and more resources into the internet from an SEO perspective, which means search engine optimization, which means just ranking high in Google and the other search engines on a free basis. We started doing pay-per-click. I started really just trying to create a great website. Until this day, I think we have one of, if not the highest ranked website in the real estate investment space. So, and that took a long time. So that was one of the things we did. We started TV from a very, very early on. I think we actually started TV advertising in 2003, right about when I quit my job. And then what I would have done differently is we relied on TV from 2003 to probably 2013 for 80% of our business. And that was crazy. It was expensive, but it worked. It was expensive. However, we did a terrible job, like I said earlier, at follow-up is what I would have done differently. And two is we would sit back and wait for the phone to ring and cherry pick these deals. We would literally like close deals on the phone. We wouldn't even go out to the people unless we could get them to agree to this amazing price on the phone. That was a huge mistake. You need to, if you have a seller with equity and they're motivated, you need to go out there and meet with them, because the chances of you closing them is going to go through the roof if you're in person. On the phone, They can hang up on you. They can't hang up with you when you're sitting across the table. So that's what I would have done differently. And then in 2014-ish, we introduced direct mail on a large scale. We started out, I think, doing 50,000 a month in postcards, and now we're doing, I think, over 200,000 postcards a month. So I would have done that differently. I thought that postcards, I just didn't have a great strategy around postcards. I didn't follow my own advice, my early advice about consistency. What I did wrong is instead of doing consistency, I would do this massive drop, and I would do it 2 times, and it wouldn't work. And I'd say, okay, well, we can't keep spending $20,000 a drop. What I should have done is I should have done a much smaller test with some different copy and then rolled that out over 6 months. So I was an idiot, and I didn't take my advice from early on where I saw that it worked, and I tried to go big too fast. And when you go big too fast and you don't have the budget, you can't test. So great lesson for everyone listening is figure out so if you have X amount of dollars to spend, make sure that you can spend those dollars over 6 months, and then just back into, okay, a postcard's going to cost me 40 cents, 45 cents, whatever the cost is to send it. Then figure out what's the maximum number you can do. But make sure again that you send out at least a minimum of 4, 5, 6 postcards to a given list over 4 to 6 months.
Yeah. What's interesting is, and I know you'd agree with this, back to kind of systems and the importance of processes, it's easier than ever right now to test stuff, right? I mean, you can, if you use, I use CallRail. I don't know if you use CallRail or a system like that, but a basic account, the entry-level account on CallRail comes with 10 phone numbers, and you can get additional numbers for like $2 or $3 a month. So you can use different phone numbers for different pieces, right, to check whether this postcard's working or this letter's working. But you could even, and I don't do this, but I know people that do, you could even use a different phone number for each drop so that hey, the phone rings better after I've hit them 4 times. I mean, there's a lot of different ways you can track things. But I mean, you'd agree right now, if you went back even just 3 or 4 years, things were a lot harder to track, right?
Absolutely. Not only that, and we do use call tracking, and we probably have 100, 800 numbers. There are websites for pennies that you can go put up 3 different copy and have 100 people go vote on it and say, this is the one that I would call off of. You can do split testing on Google pay-per-click with the headlines, because the headlines are one of the most important things. You can do split testing on Facebook. So yeah, I tell this to new students over and over and over again. We're so fortunate if you're starting a business now to be starting a business because of the tools and how effective they are and how cheap they are. So no one should have an excuse on why they can't succeed. And given the fact that they have yourself and myself teaching them, like, we've proven this, like, all you have to do is just listen to what we say and you will be successful.
Yeah. Awesome.
Franchise, just follow, get the playbook, the McDonald's, and just do exactly what they say and you'll be successful. For one reason or another, people sometimes don't do that.
Yeah. Well, I think some of the challenges, and there's so many people teaching things, or there's so many ways, truthfully, there's so many ways to, I'm not saying ways that aren't legitimate, but there's so many ways to make money in real estate. I mean, I have shiny object syndrome, and due to this show number 355, almost every person I've talked to, when I talk to guys like Jack Bosch, I get excited about land. When I talk to guys like Corey Peterson, I'm like, man, I really should be investing in multifamily. It's easy to get caught up on those things. But that's I guess one of the, if you either have to have personal restraint or you have to have a spouse that's like knocking you on the head saying no, whatever, or a partner, right? A partner that can say, wow, that is interesting, but we're not going to do that right now. So you got to have some checks and balances in there. Otherwise, it's easy to go AWOL in this business.
It really is, and that point cannot be taken lightly, because I've gone down that path and literally lost millions of dollars on stuff that we shouldn't have been doing. So, as you guys become successful, don't think that the grass is greener and jump to something else. Stick to, if you're making money what you're doing, stick to what you're doing and just scale it. Don't try to go do 5 other things, or you hear some seminar and say, oh, there's a lot of money there. We've made that mistake way too many times.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, truthfully, I'm getting to a point now where I think I can start to venture into some other things, but I've also kind of realized that the way for me to do that is through partnerships with people that already know what they're doing, right? I think in the past, it would have been like me taking all of my focus and trying to go figure that out. And it's like, if I'm going to get into self-storage units or something, like, I just want to find a way to partner with the best guy in the business, because I don't have the luxury of a long learning curve, and I don't have the time to do that. So that's where I think partnerships or working with other people is become critical. But
yeah, and that's really smart. And my business now is at a 7th level, which means that I could get on a plane today and fly to Jamaica, stay there for 6 months, fly back, and I'd be willing to bet you $1,000 that when I came back, my company would be in better shape than it was when I left. And that's because I put people and systems in place, which is awesome. It's a great feeling. And that's what has allowed me to decide, hey, what's my next venture in life? And that's the coaching. Like, we're so good at what we do. So now, I'm going to go teach this to people. I'm going to teach them exactly how I got to the 7th level, and how they can do it too.
Yeah. Awesome, Brad. Well, hey, thanks for spending time with us today.
Sure. It was awesome.
Yeah. Well, hey, if folks want to learn more about you, now I will tell you, I don't want to blow your marketing budget up here, but in terms of the importance of marketing, I went to your site a couple months ago, expresshomebuyers.com, and I'm retargeted everywhere on the internet. So I always want to tell you, I'm not going to sell you my house in Dallas, DC, but yeah, that's proof that you're definitely doing what you're saying there. But if folks want to learn more about you and what you have going on, where should they go?
So bradchandler.com is a great place to learn about the coaching. It hasn't launched yet, but if you just fill out a simple form, we'll reach out to you when it does. And then I've started a podcast where we take investors who are struggling. Could be a new investor, could be someone who's doing, struggling to get their first deal, or doing one deal a month, and just they're not reaching their goals. And I offer a free 30-minute coaching session where I literally just break down all the obstacles. And you can go to expresshomebuyers.com/free-coaching for that, and sign up for a free 30-minute coaching session. It's going to be live, just like we're doing now. So you got to be open to me saying, hey, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. But those are the two best ways for people to get in contact with me.
Got to be willing to get on the hot seat. Awesome. Well, we'll add links down below for all that. And everybody, thanks for joining us for episode number 355 with Brad Chandler. Brad, thanks again for sharing your insights, and just keep crushing it, my friend.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Everybody have a great day. We'll see you on another upcoming episode. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the FlipNerd.com Investing Show. If you're not yet an elite member of FlipNerd, you're missing out. We have tons of great training, including a new detailed masterclass published each month and live training webinars with experts twice a month. Plus, you'll get access to all of our archives, where we already have a growing library of masterclasses and other training videos. Elite members also get membership in our incredible online mastermind group, where many of the top real estate investors from across the country, including many of the hundreds of guests I've had on the show in the past, are already members. Whether you're brand new, looking to get started, or a veteran, you simply must join today. I promise you won't be disappointed. To learn more or join today, please visit flipnerd.com/lab. That's flipnerd.com/lab. See you on the next show.